hi, and hello, my pollinators. I bet you've been wondering where I've been for the past couple months. Maybe not, I don't know. But I've been lazy, but also I've been working on big art projects and focusing on improving my art skills. I'll be going over the 3 big projects that I did and how my art studies have been going so far. Also, today is my birthday. It's a very exciting day. I also might be going over the birthday gifts I might get. So let's go. So the first project, from the oldest to newest, is my own painted chair. I worked on this chair for about a month, probably 3 weeks. At first, I was gathering ideas from Pinterest and combining my own ideas into my final draft: a koi fish pond and a waterfall. My plan was to 1, make the pond the biggest spot of the chair, the seat. 2, I would also make the rock waterfall the backrest with water pouring down the stiles or the supporting posts from the backrest to the seat. 3, I would finally, at the very bottom with the stool chairs, the little posts, I would paint a bunch of painted rocks shaded individually, which took such a long time. Also, for part 1 and part 3, it took the longest time, making the koi fish, the water texture, and adding the rock shading in 2-ish weeks, where I then finished part 2 in the 3rd week, as well as doing the final touches, like adding lily pads, doing the frogs, extra fish, and highlights, and whatever. And this is how it turned out. I'm also really proud of making this chair. It took a lot of motivation and pushes not to quit because of the things that went wrong, like the thinness of the paint and the multiple layers I had to go with it, and the sloppiness of the rocks which I had to shape up. But I'm really glad that my vision was put into reality. The second project is the 3D clay dragon. It was about the size of my forearm, and it was also inspired by The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom dragons. I drew some drafts of the idea for it as shown below. It didn't turn out this way, like how it's coiled up, but that's because, to make this noodle dragon, coiling it up would put a lot of weight on it, and it really just didn't work. The plan was for my arm to go up the coiling dragon so that it would go up my forearm and the head would rest on my hand, if you get the vision. But the clay ended up cracking apart, splitting, and getting marks on it. There was entire pieces of it falling off, like the head and its spine, and the pieces were just not sticking together. It took 2 days before I gave up on the coiling idea, and I just had to give it a position where all of the weight pressure wouldn't crack the whole thing. So I ended up going with a resting snake type of pose. Though I'm disappointed the dragon was too heavy, I'm still proud of how I saved the dragon from being thrown into the mush pit of death for clay. Currently, the dragon is drying on the shelf before it gets put into the kiln. So after the kiln part, I'll get to paint it. So I have to wait a little bit for that. But in the meanwhile, I began a mural painting. And at my school, students paint tiles of the ceiling. They take the ceiling tile down, they paint it, and leave a hole in the wall till it's all done. But I did not think that all of the things I thought of to paint were going to fit on a very tiny square, until I noticed the wall paintings of other students. I seen underwater, a big octopus, and some deer. They were pretty inspiring, so I began scheming. Again, with my sketchbook, I began plotting. I was going to paint the sun and the moon with faces, clouds, and stars all over. I showed the draft to my teacher. He gave the thumbs up, and I began to sketch it on the wall, and it turned out like this. I was pretty proud of it at this point. I'd stood on a ladder for like 2 periods working on this. And when I began to paint the sun, everything went wrong. You see, when I drew the sketch with the graphite, it got smudged all over the wall and it was pretty messy. So I thought it would get all covered up with the paint I was going to use. So when I began painting the yellow for the sun, it smudged. It smudged with it and created this poopy, icky, disgusting mess. And I'm not sure how many layers it'll take to paint that over. I'm still in the process of doing this project, but continuing it. The paint was dripping everywhere, and my friends had to help clean my mess up. But by the way, I'll call my art teacher, we'll call him Mr. Johnson. That's not his real name, but it's a sub name for his privacy. So Mr. Johnson was also trying to solve my dilemma before it all got ruined. He gave me a sponge to scrub the graphite off to make it lighter so that the other paint wouldn't drip all over and ruin it. He gave me sandpaper after that because the sponge didn't work. After the sandpaper didn't work, he gave me a different grayer piece of sandpaper and it completely worked. It lightened the whole thing after I kept scrubbing for 2 periods. And he also had a shot at trying to fix this. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Finally, it worked. So now I just have to... I painted the sun already, as shown here. And now I'm going to have to do more layers, and I'm also going to have to start painting the moon pretty soon. But that's how that's going. I don't know how long until the clay dragon's done. I'll also check on that soon. Anyway, that's how it's all going. Here's all the projects and their progress. And for my birthday, I'm going to be getting Animal Crossing. Very exciting. Also, here's my art skills project so far. I've done all these other things. I'll be sure to see you in the next video.